Hello, this is Chipicon, and welcome to Otherworldly. This is the Changing Times, Changing Worlds weekly show, so that we can have a little bit of changing times, changing worlds all year round. And I have become personally very excited about, if you've seen a few of these, you know that I am a workshop addict. I discovered events a long time ago. Back in the late 80s and 90s, I discovered what were generally considered festivals. Although they didn't have as many workshops there. And then we got older and wanted beds more. and now there are conferences. But when Jane and I started out Changing Times, Changing Worlds, I was saying, no, our goal is to get communities to talk to each other, to get disparate groups to freaking get to know that we're all cool. And you can have heathens, and you can have druids, and you can have spiritualists and shamans and dowsers all together in the same room, and they don't necessarily have to make fun of each other, even though it's sometimes fun. I think it's more fun when we make fun of ourselves. But
oh yeah, well, I've been doing that for a while now. As a person with a 30-year Zen practice who suddenly realizes he's got magical abilities.
But one of the best, I've since discovered that community is really a very important part. People come to these because it's just so nice to have somebody you don't have to feel out. You don't have to explain yourself to. You don't have to say, are they going to freak if I mention the gods? And community becomes a place where you can let your hair down. Sometimes literally. It becomes a place where you can be comfortable, where those deep conversations happen that let you have deep friendships. And the first one I think of when I see that being done well is EarthSpirit, which is, I'm not going to say the creation of Deirdre, but I will say she planted the seed that grew into what is EarthSpirit. She organizes I have written down. Where did I write that down? Deirdre's a witch and a ritualist and a musician. Definitely want to talk more about the music, and the pagan community organizer for over 40 years. She's the executive director of EarthSpirit and the primary organizer of the Rites of Spring. And I think she's also the primary organizer of Feast of Lights and Twilight Covening.
No.
Am I being corrected?
No, that's right.
Sorry about that. That was me to my cat, and I thought I was muted.
Offense. Well, mute yourself again, because EarthSpirit kind of grew, and it started small, and it's very big now. I don't get there as often as I would like, because I do spread myself over lots of communities, but it's an experience like no other. And really, you have to experience it. The rituals are so amazingly crafted that you frequently have experience it. I would say you literally end up in other worlds at EarthSpirit reading rituals. It's something different, but anyway, since in order to be really successful, I think Changing Times has to work on our community skills. So I immediately said, let's see if Deirdre's available to give us some tips on how one builds community. And I think many of us have gone to a certain community and then pulled back because they seem to be wacko. which coming from many of us is saying something, or maybe they just weren't compatible wacko. I don't know. So Deirdre, I should let you speak. I don't know whether that was a really positive description and introduction, but
it's fine. It's fine. I can talk about what we've done. I don't
yes.
know what's going to work for everybody, but I can talk about what seems to work for us. And then you can ask me questions and and take what you think would work for you and leave the rest. EarthSpirit started in the late 70s as a barter organization, as a sort of earth-centered organization to develop a non-monetary economy, and within sort of a pagan context. And the first Rites of Spring was in 1979, which was the first time EarthSpirit as an organization offered something. We did a Samhain ritual that year as well. And then in 1980 was when I came in. So it really, Andros was the start. Andros was the initial planter of the seed. And maybe the thing you came to was from the Mass Pagan Federation, which had an event the year before Rites of Spring. No, Rites of Spring. The first Rites of Spring was Mass Pagan Federation. So anyway, whatever. Doesn't really matter. We have evolved over all of these years. This is our 45th Rites of Spring. So it's been a really long time of consistently creating intention and ritual space together. And some of the people who come have been coming almost that whole time. I think we do have a really strong community, a community that exists not only at the event, but outside of the event. There have been so many marriages and children and grandchildren and divorces and new careers and new people moving closer to each other and people creating networks and localizations in different places, all sort of coming out of what is at the center of EarthSpirit. And I think it's a wonderful thing to be a part of. It really is a wonderful thing to be a part of. And we don't run all of that. This is people having a real community that isn't organized by somebody, but is people developing their own relationships and their own connections after coming together within this milieu that we've created.
So you made the events, and then the community grew up around on that framework.
Yeah. And we teach classes and we do those kinds of things as well, but and we do open rituals seasonally, and we have some things that cost money, some things that don't cost money. We've done publications. We had Fireheart magazine for a number of years, which had some really marvelous writing and articles in it. We've had newsletters. We had a coffee house that we did for a while in Cambridge that was weekly, and we had musicians and people came together and for social reasons, but it was always pagan themed music. We have had monthly full moon rituals. It's just been a lot of different things over all of these years. And really those come up from what the community seems to want, what the community seems to need, and what we have the capacity to offer too, because depending on how full our books are, we can do more or we can't.
Well, also if you have like 400 or 500 people, there are going to be lots of clusters doing different things. Somebody's going to be doing drumming, and somebody's going to be doing healing, and somebody's going to be doing something else.
That's right. I think for me, at the heart of what builds community is shared values and culture. Doesn't have to be religion per se, or a particular pantheon, or a particular mythology, or a particular way of worshiping. It's for me, the community is around the values and the culture. Earth Spirit approaches paganism from a very animistic point of view. We don't have a prescribed deity structure of any sort. There are a lot of people within Earth Spirit who do, and that's wonderful. What we've tried to create is a place where all of those people with different structures, with different slants, with different perceptions about how spirituality works can come together in a place that actually has depth, isn't so eclectic that it's just floating around in the air without any power, but has depth, but doesn't exclude other people. So we try to be welcoming to just about anybody who has a perception of themselves as somebody who holds earth spirituality at the center of who they are. Or and that can be somebody who's got a defined tradition and somebody who doesn't. And we hope that what we create together when we all come together is something that's beautiful and multifaceted, and that we can all learn from each other, while still having at the core something that connects us. So I'm not sure. You asked me some more specific questions because I could just ramble, and that.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and you could ramble. I'm going to mention a couple of things that appeal to. The thing is that I'm a peripheral member of the community.
Mm-hmm.
I like the events, but I'm not driving down to the farm to
Right.
participate in. Well, also I've never been a Wiccan, or a ceremonial magician, or many of those other things. But there's often I don't know if you'd call it an ancestor altar. It's a place where people add a stone to remember the friends who passed over.
We have a couple of different ways that we work with stones, and I see somebody has their hand up too. So we have a couple of we have a healing altar at Rites of Spring, and at Feast of Lights, and at Twilight Covening too, which is a place where people can bring or select out of a basket a stone that they can put on the altar that's in memory of or with intention toward a particular person who could have passed, but more often it's about people who need healing, people who need a little extra something. And people in the community are invited to come to that altar and just spend time with those stones. We don't label them with people's names, but we all can go there and just put a little intention, a little power into what's there. And then those stones can either be taken back by the person and given to the person for whom they were intended, or they can come here to Glenwood and go onto our healing altar here, which is by the stream and gets renewed regularly, with new stones going on for different people, and gets attended to by people here and also by people who come to visit. At Glenwood, where this is our center, I live at Glenwood, which is our community center. We have also a number of sacred sites where we do different kinds of ritual and hold different kinds of energy. We have a place called the Peace Cairn, which is actually was created in response to a call to action from the Parliament of the World's Religions back in the 80s. One year they wanted us to do one small and meaningful act, and the one that I chose was to create this peace cairn where people could bring stones from all over the world, and create a cairn in the center of a small circle, small mossy circle near the stream, which would serve as a hub of peaceful energy, peaceful intention to go out to all of those original places where those stones came from. So we have this cairn of stones we have stones from every continent. I don't know about Antarctica. I don't know if we have any Antarctica, but we have them from all over the world. People have brought them, small stones, big crystals, little, pink, green, every color. They're beautiful, and there's this big pile of them now. And we also have one of the peace poles from the Buddhist monastery not too far from here. And this space, you can walk in and you can feel the intention there, but it's another way that we use stones in particular to work with connection, to work with sending intention.
Yeah. Sorry about getting that mixed up.
That's okay.
Clearly, I haven't done it recently. Griffin, did you have a question?
Well, yes, I wanted to dig into an aspect of community. After reading an offhanded comment, or not offhanded, serious comment by Carenza in chat, and looking at it, she has mobility issues, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So do I, so do my wife. And it basically means where I am now on Zoom is about the only place I can go comfortably anymore. So
Right.
how do we integrate that into any community we build? Now, certainly the informal community of all the lunatics that come on Wednesday night and talk together. I mean, I've been a part of that now for a while. And if it had to happen in person, it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So Deirdre, how would you address the concept of inclusion of virtual community?
Right. We got tested on that when the pandemic happened, right? We had to create something that would work without people being next to each other. So what we did then was we held the events online, and we brought our workshop presenters. We did the whole thing online, so that as best we could. And I think we actually were reasonably successful. People were really happy to see each other. And that was great. Coming out of that, and then we would do seasonal rituals online. Not so much that, I mean, ritual is different online, right? You don't feel the power in the room. You don't feel the tree next to you. You don't feel those things. But we could create something that then people could take to wherever they are, and put it into the ground where they are, or in some way embody it. Now what we're doing that is online is we have two different offerings that members of the community can participate in. One is, they're called sunflower mornings and evenings. They're times where people can come together and keep up with each other. Make those connections, continue to talk. It's more about the emotional connections than it is about magic or about spiritual practice, those groups. But that's pretty much what we're doing right now. We're not doing rituals online anymore, although we found that we could do it. It was hard once we could get back in person to do both online rituals and in-person rituals. We just sort of ran out of human power to pull it all together, you know. I think it can be done. I think that it requires, at least for us, it required a real team. When we were doing it during the pandemic, we had about 10 people working on each one. And we had, lots of different rooms and people moving around from here to there, and there was a lot of organizing. I think it can happen. I think what you're doing is creating and building community in a lot of ways. If this is a group that gets together on a regular basis, you're doing some of it.
Yeah, and I think that's important because I've been really spending a lot of time thinking about how we sort this out, because I think about things like Starwolf says, there's just so much of what he teaches that you really can't do online.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about the fact that we can't, I can't hold stones in my hand. And on the other hand, the social and emotional connection is there. And I am really chewing on this because, well, you look at the three treasures. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And the Sangha is a religious community, and I've never had one. And yet here, I feel I have a religious community, because even though most people here do not follow a path through the woods anywhere near mine, I still feel a connection. And I really want to see that if we're going to build the ultimate community, it has to be a mix of the virtual, where you pick up knowledge and take it home to your own backyard or your kitchen or whatever, plus the hands-on, feet in the dirt community. And I really want to see as many people as possible participate in both sides of that.
Yeah, I think that we're learning what the internet connections can offer, and we're also learning what the limitations are. I think that, as you described it, I think the online communication is great and connection is great. I do feel like it's limited. We try our best to have events that people can come to, and to make as many accommodations as we can, to make it possible for as many people as possible to come, given whatever their abilities are. We're not always able to make it work. We do have one event in a hotel. We do have indoor Samhain and Yule rituals. We do try to create accessibility for people that have physical limitations, but you can't always do that when you're outside in the wild place. So you're right that there's some conflict there. And so therefore, I feel like having both is important. One of the things we tried at Rites of Spring not at Rites of Spring, at Feast of Lights this year, was to have an online component to the event, so that we had, and we didn't get all the way there, but the intention is to have a room at the event where anything that's in there is on Zoom. And so people can participate either in person or on Zoom with that particular workshop, that series of workshops, or the things that happen in that room. And so we could have a presenter. We had two people who presented together. One of them was in Puerto Rico and one of them was in person. And they offered a workshop together about some work that they've been doing. And people from wherever could participate via Zoom, and people were also in the room. And so I think that there's some hybrid pieces like that events can do to enable both kinds of things to be happening at once. Maybe you can't get to everything in the whole event, because you can't go to every room and set up the cameras in every room. It's massive. But maybe you could do, I don't know, you might want to try one room of something like that.
Yeah. We are I think one thing we discovered during the pandemic is when you are outside, the wind blows on microphones.
Yeah.
It makes it very hard to hear. People are speaking, but you're hearing.
Right.
We want distancing. Oh well. But I was wondering, the sunflower mornings, is that in honor of Sue?
Well, in a way, yeah.
I now associate her with every time I see a sunflower, I see Sue.
It's really
one of the beautiful ladies in the community who, gee, what a surprise, she got sick and died, as people do when they get old. Which, is like, darn it.
Right.
We missed her.
We created we used it as a meeting space for sending healing power to her. So we said, what would work? And a sunflower was something that she liked. It wasn't like Sue is a sunflower, but it was something that she liked. So for online, what we've done in the past is you create a group and have an image that people can work with, so that everybody's directing power to the same image. And then the person who's receiving it can go to that same place, that same visualized place and pull what they need from there. So we created an image of a field of sunflowers when she was ill, and people poured love and caring into that place, and she could draw from that. From there, the sunflower became very seriously associated with her.
Yes.
And she was somebody who had a gift for making connections with people. And she would pick up all those odd ones, all the ones that didn't have a landing place somewhere else, all the ones who just needed somebody to talk to. And she could talk and listen and really be with and care about people, a vast variety of people. And so one of the things that we wanted to do in sort of an honor of her was to name a sunflower committee, being one that was about welcoming, about having Earth Spirit be accessible to people emotionally, I guess. That wasn't about the physical accessibility, but so finding so we've created Sunflower Mornings. Anya created that actually herself, as a place that people could come together and be together in between times. And then Chris and Katie created Sunflower Evenings, and so we have two different times that people can come. Some people can come in the morning. Some people don't get up at 8 o'clock, and they come in the evening. And they're two different groups. The membership varies. They're all people who have been involved with and coming to Earth Spirit for a long time, or at least for sometimes in person. That's the main thing, is that before you can join that group, we need to know who you are, so that there's some control over who people are revealing themselves to, because it gets pretty personal. But those have been going for 3 years now, and it's pretty great. It's pretty great. People get a lot out of it.
Just connection. You need to be able to say useless, unnecessary stuff.
Yeah.
That can't always be on point. Another thing I think that really works for Earth Spirit is the music. They're very, very lucky, because somebody, and I don't know whether it's you or Andres or a group of you, are musical. I was down at Sacred Space, and not to badmouth them, because much of what they were doing was incredible, but I've been spoiled by Earth Spirit. The words were okay, but the music was atonal. It was like, okay, you're sustained talking, but I'm not getting any music out of it. And
Right.
there are very few things that bring people together more than blending their voices and creating this unified. They do dancing. Deirdre will take and lead a snake dance that goes around, and usually there's something in the center, whether it's a fire or a pile of vegetables. and going back to what you were saying about accessibility, they have started making sure there's places where people with mobility issues have a place to sit, so that they're not excluded because they can't walk. They're on a campground, and they have people who take people in their cars to places that other people are happily jogging down this dirt road to get to. But
Right.
bunch of the old people get into the cars and get taken. So
Right.
caring for every person is, I think, big. But please talk about the music, because to me, the music that you make, the chants, the fact that you train people to do the music is, and everybody, it seems like almost everybody knows the songs.
Well, we have I agree with you that there's very little that connects people heart to heart more than music. I think some of my most spiritual experiences have been, with symphony orchestras. I mean, their music is a way of opening up your soul, I think. So for me, it's a key part of my life, always has been. Um, and a lot of the chants that we do, I wrote. Some of them, some of them are sort of out in the greater pagan community. They come from there, and some of them are written by other people in our community. But we see within EarthSpirit, we see our chants as really as our musical liturgy. They really are our, instead of any written liturgy, otherwise, we use the chants that way. It's our shared language. If if I started singing All Beings of the Earth, people would know exactly where they were because that chant in itself encapsulates the essence of Twilight Covening. So if I started singing All Beings of the Earth, and people all of a sudden,
Yeah, so now it's like
all of a
feel
sudden
a
you're,
healing
yeah,
song
all of a
rise.
sudden you're
Yeah,
in the woods in October,
we're programmed.
well, we've created a channel for that energy to move within us, within that music. The same thing is true of many others. We have ritual songs that are used for specific rituals um, during the year at different times. We use traditional music as well. We use old songs, old mostly well, Northern European songs, but mostly ones that are in English, and we've recently started incorporating some songs from a community that we're close to in Lithuania and bringing some of those chants in as well. But we use it as channels, as places to move through. That song carries us right into the place where we're trying to go. Um, and people learn them. Most of them are pretty simple. We try to make them so that they're learnable. They're not all 3 lines, but we try to make them really learnable so that everybody can participate, and it's not a performance by any means. I think because Andres and I have always sung, we've attracted other people who like to sing, who come and sing with us, and then that sort of spreads out, so it becomes something that, so maybe our community is more appealing to people who make music because we use music. But because we use music, other people start to feel comfortable with it as well, whether or not they've ever been singers in their lives. And it doesn't matter whether you can sing on pitch or not. It's really about connecting with that flow, connecting with that sound, opening your throat and your heart and sharing that, who you are, with everybody else who's there. And it can really carry you somewhere.
Yeah. Griff, did you have a question? You raised your hand again.
Raised my hand because music is terribly important, and I just wanted to share very brief descriptions of my experiences where my father was a musician. He was a guitarist in a country western band. And I learned to love music from him. And after high school, I was invited by my chorus teacher, who also happened to be the choir director at a Lutheran church nearby. He said, "You want to keep singing?" I said, "Where do I sign?" And I went there, and I adored the place because I looked at it. If there was any word in the liturgy that could be sung, we would sing it. Everything.
Yeah.
And it helped that the minister had a beautiful voice. I remember the chills I got when he sang Jesus, name all names above. So that got me going. And then much later in Milford, New Hampshire, which Chippicon knows about, I was a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church there. And the most fun time I ever had there and I don't remember what season it is or what event, but the minister rounded us up into a conga line, and we marched around the church singing Lord of the Dance. And it was great because I started bellowing the lyrics too, along with everybody else. And we rapped all the way around the building. And these were such wonderfully visceral experiences that cut through everything. And, so here you have some relative, well, I would say both the Lutherans and the UUs are a little bit off center from most Christianity, but that was and that's where I also learned African drumming.
At the UU. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a teacher there who learned from a Nigerian drummer named Babatunde Olatunji.
Yeah.
And he was great because he would hold up his hand and write on it in magic marker. And his slogan was, if you can say it, you can play it. And he had a syllable to describe every beat.
Yeah.
So, music is everywhere. Music is wonderful. And I just wish I had more time and energy to practice both my singing, because I've largely lost my voice at this point, and my drumming.
Well,
But
Deirdre, I'd like you to mention, because actually that they do have a group that sings, and you can get the tapes of the beautiful music. And you guys sang at the Parliament of the World Religions, didn't you?
We did. We've sung.
I expected a lot of different groups sang there.
It's called Mother Tongue.
Mother Tongue, right? I spaced the name.
Right, and we've performed many different places. But the Parliament was the biggest. We performed a couple of times there. The first time was in 93, sorry. When the first of this modern set of parliaments happened. So, and we sang there and did a big performance there, and we got a lot of really great response. And then we performed again later on. Where were we? Barcelona. So we've performed and shared pagan music in very large international interfaith venues. And one of the things that seems to happen is people really appreciate it, and they understand a little bit more about who we are and what our belief system is, or if you want to call it that, because we can sound sort of out there, like you said before. We can sound like it's sort of out there somewhere, and not a real religion, or not a real practice, or whatever real is to them. But we found that music reached right across and was a very effective way of communicating what we care about and what we love and what we hold sacred. So there, as well as in terms of connecting the community, it's been a powerful tool for EarthSpirit.
I remember a friend of mine told they were at some little New England church, and they were all singing enthusiastically that day, and the pastor signaled, keep singing, and pointed to the rafters, and the rafters, they were singing just right, and the rafters had started vibrating and were toning. You make the rafters ring. They were literally making the rafters play musical notes through their singing. And it's like, boy, that's doing it right.
That's wonderful.
And but yeah, there's so much in the music and in the ritual, and it does take a lot of people. But I've often suggested that don't go. I've never understood why people would go to bars to drink, to get to meet somebody. If you want to get people together, have them all working on a project. whether it is cleaning a park or building buildings for the homeless or whatever, if you get people working together on a mutual, making sandwiches for the homeless, suddenly you're building a relationship with the people. And I think that's a big thing is in getting people. Okay, here's the thing about EarthSpirit events. We go to these parks or campgrounds, and having paid good money, and I'm telling you, most of it I think is to pay the campground and the food, and the food is top drawer. But then everybody has to take a kitchen shift. And boy, is there griping about that. So it's like, oh my goodness gracious, we're paying this much and we have to work in the kitchen. But it's one of my favorite parts of the events. You get such sense of getting together with everybody. I've especially enjoyed watching Andres make fun of the way people gripe about it, because working together. Can you talk about working together and people pitching in, how you get people to join?
Well, I think we could pay people to do everything, and the price might go up, but we could pay people to do everything. But then we wouldn't. I feel like being part of creating it is part of what makes you part of it. Being part of, knowing that, okay, your job is to, build these fires and collect this firewood and make sure that it's ready so that when everybody comes, we can have a beautiful fire. Or your job is to be with the kids for a couple of hours this afternoon, even though you don't have kids, doesn't matter, that can be your job. Or your job is to wash dishes, or your job is to chop vegetables, or your job is to sit by the walkie-talkie just in case somebody needs something. I feel like we would lose a lot if we stopped including people in the building of it. We have, before Rites of Spring is the biggest event, and it's they're all very different from each other. I can talk about that if you want to know about them.
I would like that,
but for Rites of Spring, we have an initial 2 days that are called the Village Builders Assembly. And that is specifically a time for coming and creating what needs to be there for Rites of Spring to happen, both physically in terms of putting up tents and setting up workshop spaces and all of that, but also magically and spiritually. We build shrines in different places. We have a stone shrine and an inspiration shrine and a fire shrine, and we have different ones around a lake shrine around the camp, which are sacred places that hold energy. And we try to do the physical work that we're doing with a deep intention, so that all of that intention flows into all of these places. And then before we open the gates to Rites of Spring at the very beginning, we have a ritual gate that people pass through to come in, and then pass through again to go out. It's like stepping into a sacred space, even though the mountain is sacred all the time. We're creating a shift, a place where people can shift to be
a liminal space.
Yeah. But before we open those gates, everybody processes all over the whole place. Everybody who can processes all around the whole place, consecrating each of those shrines, grounding that energy, putting out intention that it's a safe place, that it will be a safe and healing and learning place for people. And people pay $100 to come do this, because, well, they get fed and they get housed. And that's about, that's really the base cost of food and housing for those 2 days. But it's the benefit in that, it's like my favorite time at Rites of Spring, because here we are and we're creating this thing that's going to welcome our community. And there's so much love that gets poured into the physical labor that it makes everything else vibrate. Yeah. So I feel like that's just being part of that, being able to be part of that, it's very special. And yeah, we can use the help, or we can, and those the physical help, but it's not really about that. It's
Well,
really
you couldn't
about
have all the shrines and the labyrinth.
right, right.
And so much of energy work is internal.
Mm-hmm.
I know how cranky my daughter got. She was working on the labyrinth at one point. There's a labyrinth on the beach with marked out with lots and lots and lots of candles, and they would go out, and so her job was to go light the candle again. And some of the people would just walk right across. And it's like, no, those walls are there. Don't break through those walls. Those are walls. She's like, wait a minute, you got to go around to get to where you're going, because we're here to create those energetic walls. We can't break them just to relight the candles. So she got very cranky about that because she's second generation.
Right.
She grew up with magic as a given. And
right. Well, that's one thing that we do have that's really wonderful at EarthSpirit, is that we have a generational population. We have not many, but lots of families where there are 3 generations present at our events. And that's really special, including mine now.
yes, so jealous.
I just became a grandmother. It's very exciting.
She's got a baby. She gets
Yeah.
to hold.
But the multiple generations, to me, also helps it feel like more of a very real community, because our kids don't come and then when they're little and then disappear. A lot of our kids come and they might end up somewhere else during college, but or for some period of time, but a lot of kids come back
Mm-hmm.
and then bring their friends, and that's pretty wonderful. We find that to be a really, really rewarding experience. And I think some of that is because we try to give those young people responsibility and authority and let them move up and not try to keep them as children. If you're 30 years old, I was, well, how old was I when I started? I started doing this when I was 23, right? So so now we might look at somebody who's 23 in our community and think that person's really young, but then
Yeah.
I was making this happen when I was 23. So
Mm-hmm.
they've got all that capacity too. And if I'm just going to be stuck in my own ways and not acknowledge that their new ideas and their new abilities and their vigorous energy at that age, what it can bring and what it can contribute, that's just a big loss for all of us. So trying not to be attached and trying to make sure that things can evolve and into their new ways.
Diane, did you have a question, or you have to unmute?
Trying.
Hi, Diane.
Hi. I find myself in a place of grief right now because I grew up in a town where there was a Catholic church and the other church, which was Unitarian Universalist, and we owned the church, but there were more people who were Church of Christ, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I have waited all my life for a UU minister. Uh-huh. We finally got one. And it's Jesus every week. I was in the choir. Oh. But everything is so Christian.
Oh, that's hard.
What I love about this community is the trees, is being out where I have always felt something incredibly special. Mm-hmm. And the music certainly is huge because, as Griffin said, when you have music enveloping you, the UU church I went to in Worcester is the one that spent $1 million replacing their organ when there was a fire.
Wow.
You need the magic in that. and the magic in the community. I feel like I'm orphaned
Mm-hmm.
because my brother moved out of town. He was in the choir when I joined, and my sister died. And it's
Right.
just, so I will go back there and make the salad for the holly berry brunch. But where I feel at home is EarthSpirit.
Oh, thank
So
you.
thank you.
Well, you're part of us for sure. So
Yeah. Well, the more I work on changing times and the more I visit other groups, the more I find my initial intention to simply bring various groups together to talk to each other was misplaced, misguided. You don't have, I like being on the edge of EarthSpirit, on the edge of the East Coast thing, heathen community, on the edge of SCA, on the edge of fertile ground. I am not deeply in their hierarchy, but I am in touch. And to me, that's just my place. And I figured that other people could do that too, swim in all the different ponds and then get up and lungfish their way over to the next pond. but no, I think that I've come to recognize that nobody's going to want to stay if there's no community feeling. And I have learned that I have been wrong about so many things in the last 12 years of working on changing times. But, and I've been watching you guys because you do it so well. At one point, oh my God, must have been the 90s. Rites of Spring was described as being the largest gathering of pagans in one place. No longer. There are some really big ones out there.
There's some much bigger ones, yeah.
Oh my God.
Which I don't want to be ever.
No. I don't want to. Large rituals are difficult. Every ritual should be tailored to the size of the group that you're encompassing so that they can all get together.
Right.
But in one of the first things they said, well, shall we bless the hotel? And I said, why would we do that? We don't want to irritate anybody who may not be into that. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's bless the heck out of it. Have everybody layer their blessings on. But I don't know if you can find as many people who are as delighted at finding out how wrong they've been as I have been in this situation. You said you could talk about this may or may not have been what you were saying. I heard talk about the differences between Rites and Feast of Lights and Twilight.
Right.
They all
Yeah,
do
I
different
can.
things.
I can. They're very different. I saw the question about how big is Rites of Spring. Rites of Spring right now is usually between 350 and 400 people. We ran between 400 and 500 for a while. Our biggest one was almost 800, and that was way too big. That was 1989. Which is what the time that you're talking about. We had a couple of years of 700 and 800 people, and it was too big.
And that's when you discovered no.
Yeah, we just could not create the community that we wanted with that number of people. So Rites of Spring continues to be the largest event, and it's in the spring. It's about opening up. It's extroverted. It's celebratory. We have a maypole. We weave a giant web together. We do a lot of singing. We have sacred fire circles. We have drumming. We have dancing. We have merchants. We have a lot of real celebratory activities, and we have workshops. And we have kids and families, and it's a beautiful time to be outdoors. And so we really love having that celebratory feeling of reaching toward each other. And then on the other side of the year, this is at the end of May, and then in October we have Twilight Covening, which is a turning inward event. we have people come, and it's only adults, and it's about working with a small group of people with a particular technique, deepening our knowledge. It was created as a magical college, really. That was the original intention, is that it would be a time when people could come and hone their skills, really gain deep knowledge of a particular thing. So they work with a small group of people and a clan leader or two who teach those particular skills. And it could be that you learn a form of meditation and you do that every time the group comes together, or you're learning herbal lore, and so you develop a booklet of what you've learned. Or it could be that that you're working with plants, or you're working with trees, or you're working with music, or you're working with dance, and you're using all of this to deepen your spiritual knowledge and to sort of prepare yourself for what work you're going to do in the dark time when you're home by yourself, when the whole world turns inward, all life goes inside, we go inside. So it's really about preparing for your winter's work. And we have a big whole community ritual that's a journey that we call the visioning ritual, that sort of takes people out and around to try to find inspiration or a vision or something that will help them see direction for themselves for the winter. We have other full group rituals. We have a dream circle where people chant together for 2 hours, that same all beings chant that I just sort of started a minute ago, to open up to our dreams. And there's a tea an herbal tea that we make and share there, and people can have some of the tea and sit and chant and really just sort of sink in, and then go off to bed in silence. There's the whole weekend is a ritual. There's markers for the different times of day. It's complex, but it's all about turning in. And then a Feast of Lights is in the middle of the winter in a hotel, because we're not going to be outside with a crowd in the snow. In February, this next year, it's going to be at the end of January. And it's really about nourishing each other in the middle of the wintertime. It's about coming together and telling tales and singing songs and sharing knowledge. There's a ritual and a dance that have to do, it's called the Stag King's Mask, and there's a ritual that happens around crowning a new stag of winter, and there's dancing afterwards, sort of a celebratory, you could talk about it being Oil Milk or Bridget or one of those kinds of times where the spark is just getting started.
And costumes.
Yes, it's a costumed event. That one is, yeah, in the middle of at the end of January, and which is a lot of fun, and so the three have very different flavors, and a lot of people come to all three. A lot of people also have one that is the one that they come to. There's some people who only come to Twilight Covening. There's some people that only go to Rites of Spring. There's some people who, only do Feast of Lights and Rites of Spring. It really varies, but it feels like for a number of people, this is their year. This is how they mark their cycle of their year. And this is for the people that are further from us in geography, because we've got local people who, will get together from Beltane to Yule. We have open rituals every holiday.
And the little ones, the rites of passage you mark. Have you gotten to the point? I remember talking to Sue, it was before the pandemic and before Sue died, about creating an eldering, a croning ceremony for because it was probably 25 years ago at least.
Yeah.
Sue had a workshop on croning,
Mhm,
and there were about 20 women there,
mhm,
and between the ages of 40 and 60 something, and not
mhm.
one of them was willing to say I'm a crone yet. Not
Right,
one.
right,
Which
right.
is when I invented the joke that what is the stage? But you got maiden, mother, crone. What's the stage in between mother and crone? It's denial.
Huh.
Um, but yeah, at this time, we as we die off,
Mhm,
as
mhm.
we can't get to events because we've got mobility issues.
Right.
Honoring the elders and supporting the elders
Mhm.
is becoming more and more important to me. We need to work on that. You need a community.
Right,
It takes a child to raise a village. It
right.
takes a village to support a crone or an elder.
Mhm. It
And this
does.
is something, I don't know if you've come through that because I haven't been as involved recently, but
We haven't yet created a community ritual that is around aging. We have created a community ritual that is acknowledging some of our elders in the role within the community in terms of teachers and people who may have built the community. There's a ritual around that, but there is not yet a ritual around aging, and it is something that's a topic of conversation and is an ongoing topic of conversation.
yeah.
It's um, and I'm not so not yet.
It just
We're
seems to me that
It's
rights
very
would have to
present.
be where it would be discussed,
Yep.
because either that or just at Glenwood, because uh Twilight's so focused,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so focused on the inner work that people are getting into,
Mm-hmm.
and Feast of Lights is focused on its thing, and I think it would have to be explored at, well, isn't Rites of Spring when the boys are,
The coming of age ceremony, the
yeah.
coming of age ritual happens at Rites of Spring for young people who are usually between 15 and 18.
And do
And
people get
certain
married there too?
people have.
Yeah. I,
Um, Part of it is capacity. How much can we take on to do at Rites of Spring? It's an interesting balancing act.
yeah.
We're working on the program right now and thinking about how much do we how much is all community ritual and how much is smaller individual workshops and classes and events and other things. Where do we call off everything so that this thing can happen,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. You know it's just an interesting balance, and we're not all the way through
Oh
with
my
all of it
goodness, I
yet.
could listen to you for a long time, and I just noticed it's 9. So I'm going to make a quick call. Is anybody else that showed up here tonight got a question to ask Deirdre before we lose her?
Yeah, I was there.
Don't forget, we've got the 60 plus affinity group,
Yes, we do. We
which
do.
is very nice.
Yes, and that is a place
And we
specifically designed to give people who are aging a place to be together and build their own community, and that's
we
that's
may still
important.
be 18 inside,
Yeah,
but we
that's right.
know there are little hairs.
Our joints are
Everything hurts.
yeah.
A
Our,
lot,
our
Yeah.
joints are 60. Bob, did you?
a lot of things we do seem to be unintentional, and they work out really well. And it's surprising when you see children grow up in the community, and they grow up wonderfully compared to the outside world. I mean, at Rites or any other function, you have all these kids, and every one of them has 100 or more parents. And I mean, I had like this much to do with raising some of them, but it feels like I did that much. Oh boy. And a lot of the things we do, I mean, when we open at Rites, when we go around at Twilight, we open up the area and purify it and set up all the different camps. I mean, I know what that's doing for my own tradition. That's opening up. So when we pass in the next life, will be drawn back again. So our life might be a tad easier than it was before we found this community.
Mm.
I mean, I seen a posting of a wonderful little thing of a little girl, Blind Melon, the little video for that. And it was impressive because eventually she finds her community. But that stupid video drove me to tears like 10 times that I watched it.
You're such a softie.
It's, I love kids,
Marshmallow.
people in general. Now they're worth everything you spend on them and then some.
Mhm.
Griffin, did you have a question?
I
Sorry.
think he was just saying it. Well,
Oh,
I
okay.
think Griffin has just stepped away, as he
Okay. Good.
told me privately.
Transform.
But I guess that's it. We should probably let everybody go. I know that people have to. It's nice to get time together, but we also need to
Have
eat,
dinner.
eat on schedule. And thank you so much, Deirdre. You've given us some things to think about, and not that I don't think about things on my own.
Well, thanks for having me. It's really been fun to meet some of you and talk with you and
I
you know.
do have one lower priority question I had written down first,
Okay.
because you started off talking about how you started out as a barter community.
Uh-huh.
And that fascinates me because we've all been raised in an environment where there was a uniform medium of exchange called dollars or
Mhm.
euros or whatever. How did that work out?
Well, you have to ask Andres because it really was before me.
Oh, okay.
So it's not something that
Okay. Well, where did she go?
I did barter in my business with a
Oh, she's
couple
gone.
people.
Deirdre has
And
disappeared.
it worked with some, but with others, they still owe me $1,300. So
Right. And that was my impression of it too, was that the minute you get away from having this uniform medium of exchange, then you get into arguments over how much is a dozen eggs worth.
it
And
wasn't like that.
no, but you talk about bartering. We've done it. I know Jen has done it especially, where having a bead store and therefore having this treasure trove.
I think that I'm going to I'm not going to get a chance to stop. I'm going to stop the recording, and we can keep talking about this until everybody wants to run away. But
I need to head out.
since Deirdre